Welcome to the Volpreneur podcast channel. My very special guest today is Fred Schebesta, who's an award-winning serial entrepreneur, most famous for co-founding Australia's leading personal comparison website, Finder. He recently appeared on the AFR Young Rich list with a wealth of 193 million. Fred is currently leading the Finder app, which is Australian first that will connect your bank accounts and automatically compare products for you. Welcome, Fred. Thanks for coming along.
Thank you, John, and thank you, listeners, for joining in and hearing us. It's a great podcast. Subscribe, guys. This is where it's at.
Cool. So the rule for my podcast usually is I've got to learn something. So we only interview people where I actually sometimes don't know what I'm talking about. So that's the idea. Otherwise, there's no point. So my whole objective for the interview is to try to make sure I learn something, and hopefully listeners learn something from that as a result. So I did a little bit of research on you and had a bit of a look around. It's quite interesting. So where did you sort of come from in the first place? Like, how did you get to where you got to now? And sort of a fairly short explanation. I mean, obviously it could be a very long story, but how did you what sort of pushed you from, I'm assuming you started off, where'd you start off at school? Did you go to university or something, or?
Yeah, I did go to university. I studied actuarial studies and computer science, but that I didn't finish my actuarial studies, and I actually didn't get a computer science degree either. I got a finance degree. But at the same time, I learned a lot from computer science. I did some really advanced computer science. And I took the ideas from there and I was actually coding it on the internet. So I was building websites from the database and things, those computer science ideas. And I was building websites and I started selling them. And then, the websites we sold for clients, we started to learn how to market them on the internet and get them to up Google. And then from there, we kind of saw, a lot of our clients, they've got some really great sites. How can we actually go about making our own? So we started, obviously we knew how to build websites, we knew how to market them. So we thought, hey, why don't we make our own? And that's where actually Credit Card Finder was born. So it was one of the ideas. We had sort of four ideas. One was a poker site, one was a Mother's Day present site, one was a Sudoku site,
Right.
Credit Card Finder was the fourth one.
Right. Okay. And so you started basically. How did you get going from that point? So sometimes it's very interesting to entrepreneurs because a lot of people sort of hang in there and then they bail out when they think that it's going to fail, because they can't go any further. And it's like that tipping point between getting somewhere and starting to get confident that you're going to make it. And obviously in some cases, like you could have started a poker site and then it'll not working out, and then you move over to credit cards. And obviously there's a trigger point there to kind of see, okay, I'm getting somewhere with it. What sort of led you to think, okay, that's going to work?
It's a great question because we put a lot of effort into the poker site, but it kind of petered out to a point because Texas Hold'em was really big for a while, and then it slowed down. So it was a bit trendy. Mother's Day presents is not a good business because it only happens one time a year.
Yeah, not a great
and Sudoku is not really like a business. We couldn't figure out what do you make from this.
Yep.
The credit card site was really a great idea for us, but which I didn't realize at the time, because it required the skills that I had mastered at the agency. Right. So it required, building a website, which I knew how to do. It required internet marketing, which I did for 7 years. And they were the key skills, writing content, doing SEO, building email, great content around that as well. That's the core of what I knew. So everything I was doing, I didn't have to figure out what to do. I already knew what to do.
Yeah.
I just had to execute. And so for at least the first, I'd say 4.5 years, we just continued executing things. We didn't even need to really think too much what to do, because we just knew this is how you build a website, and this is how you get traffic. And
didn't have to think about it too much.
No. So I think the reason why it worked is because we played into our skills that we'd mastered, making all the mistakes in the past. And then it kind of got to a point where then you had to come up with a strategy, right? So now we've built a business, and you could have just left it as it was. And I know some people who who we're competing with along the way, and they kind of just sort of stayed at that level, and they make a lot of money, and that's great. But then we thought, okay, how do we take this further? What do we need to do? So we needed to master more than credit cards, so other verticals, and then we needed to master, organizational structures and management and those kind of things. We have lots, more people. That's quite intense.
Yeah, yeah, that's the hard part. I mean, I always think I've sort of this theory now that after being in business so long, pick the laziest way to do something, and then work from there. Don't try to find the most difficult, hard-working way to get something done, because it's just going to get worse. And sometimes, I think I've sort of experienced this as well. You sort of like suddenly all these projects of the past where they were failures or didn't work out really well actually give you a foundation for the one that you're about to execute and the one you're going to be successful in. And I think that's a natural part of business. And I think that the biggest thing we've talked about a few times on the podcast about the fact of failure, that people, particularly entrepreneurs, don't really accept failure as an option, but they also accept failure as a learning tool, not a scenario where you just, you failed and you quit straight away. Yeah. As a traditional kind of employee or even to a degree a business owner will just say I failed and they'll give up. I mean, I was in a taxi with an Uber guy. I seem to give out marketing advice in Ubers lately, but the idea was the guy had gone through a really bad time in his life, and he's now out selling Ubers. And the reality is one thing he hadn't done. He'd lost all his money. He got to a point where he didn't anything, but he didn't trust himself. So he took the easy way, if you're thinking about it. He's gone on and driven Ubers, and he's got something on the side. So he's trying, but it hasn't clicked yet. And so when I talked to him, I said, well, what, you want to write a book? And it's all this sort of stuff. And he said, oh, yeah. And I said, well, what's your back end of this book? And he didn't have a clue until he realised he'd worked out this way of trading on shares. I said, well, there you go, right? And it's like this light went on. And I think the problem was that he'd given up, right? He'd actually given up, and he was just beating himself up. And I think that's the dangerous thing with failures. You've got to remember that it's a learning experience, and the more you fail, the better sometimes, because you learn so much more out of it.
Yeah, it's so true. That objectivity and ability, you're right, to sit back and take it as a set of experiences and nothing, and it's not personal. You're right. You're exactly, that's very profound, and I think you're right. And in those moments, what when you say he'd given up, why did you think he'd given up?
Because basically what he's doing is he's trying to find capital to create his business. So he's looking for money. And he said to me, look, he wasn't asking me for money, but he's saying to me, look, I can turn $1,000 and earn $400 in a day. But if I could have more money, then I could, obviously he was struggling for cash. If I could earn more money, then I could make more money. And so he's got the right idea, but I think he's just circling around, and I think he's driving around the taxi and just beating himself up. You know what I mean? And so he hasn't really, in some respects, I think, you got to burn the bridges. Sometimes you just got to I'm going to do this now. And I mean, I did that when I started my first business. I just basically quit my job and started the business next week after 12 years. And sometimes you got to burn that boat, right? And say, look, I'm just going to go for it. And if it fails, it fails. But at least you've tried. And I think that's the danger I find in a lot of these guys. I come across a lot, and you might see them too. In Australia, there was a huge population of men around my age who suffered badly in GFC and suffered badly before the depression, the recessions and stuff like that, and their businesses failed. And then they went and got a job, and they gave up. They got all this good stuff, but they've never gone back to it.
I think I definitely I've taken a lot of the big losses and learned from that and built on that for sure. I think the hard part, what you're saying as well, is when to pick a short-term win and take it for what it is, something which is not going to last, versus what will you invest in for the long term. Yep. That's really hard. What's a little, like, so this share thing he's got, it's probably making $400, but probably if you do scale it, it doesn't tend to work out when you scale trading strategies. Yeah. Whereas, if you're doing something, if there's an investment where you can scale it, I think that's what the difference with Finder was. I realized you could scale it. It's not just a one-off fluke, right? I thought maybe it's a fluke. Oh yeah, we're comparing these credit cards. It's all it is, But when you realize here's something where if we continue to pour capital in, we'll continue to get more returns. Is it actually a linear formula, or is it just a blip?
Yep. Is it MySpace, right? Like it's at some point it's going to run out. And so that's an interesting thing, because I was looking at the way that you sort of operate, and I found that you have a finders of venture stuff. So which presumably what you've done is you've kind of self-funded yourself through this process. And how did you go about that? Because obviously if you start just on your own, and that's the hard part for most entrepreneurs, is start from on your own, get some staff, then find some funding, and then move that to the next level. Because from what I can see, your infrastructure is pretty big now. You've got a lot of staff running around. You've got a lot of hungry mouths to feed. You have to build a very solid business around that. Otherwise, it could easily disappear tomorrow. And so how did you sort of get to the capital raising start part of that and get yourself from one point to another?
Yeah, I think so we've never taken on any capital in the company. It's 10 years now. I just came back from our London and Poland office, actually. I'd never been to our Poland office. I feel bad. And it's been running for 5 years. There's 40 people there. I met everyone for the first time. It was awesome. I saw them on Slack and stuff, but anyway, that's a whole experience. How do you grow like that and preserve the capital? Well, I think it's about what level of sacrifice are you prepared to make with your own lifestyle, and to forego now in your life and invest that in your company instead and get the returns later. That's the question, right? So I remember when we started Finder, we left a job when we were getting paid, I don't know, like 150 grand or something, and we paid ourselves $1,500 a month. And that's probably not the right, we were probably worth a lot more than that, but it's something that just, you sacrifice, we've kept a lot of cash in the company. We have paid out dividends over time, but we've kept a lot of cash in the company to continue to invest, and you sacrifice. So you don't, it's not like living a fancy, crazy lifestyle and those kind of things. You'll see me, I live a regular lifestyle to some extent. I think it's escalated to a lot over time, but I think this comes back to what you're saying about investments. Plan those investments. What are the things are you going to invest in the long term in, versus what are the things that you're going to make a quick buck out of, but then move on. And we just cut a lot of the quick bucks out and just made long-term investments in things and just kept plowing money into it. And a lot of the profits we just stored up as cash. Which is probably a dumb idea over 10 years because, it devalues terribly.
Cash is always king, as they say.
Yeah, but again, we pumped that a lot into the company, right? So we kept reinvesting and kept finding. So we're worried in Australia, for example, to move overseas and making that call and having the cash flow and the investment. But we're going to run out of space to expand, right? We're just going to run out. It's like there's only a certain population size. So we're like, okay, well, we're going to need some more runway and to keep growing. And I think part of that question is, what is the goal? What is your goal? For us, the goal, we kept raising the bar essentially. And so that's the way, we started by just going, okay, we just want to make 100 grand a month.
Yep.
And I remember everyone was like, that's crazy. And I said, and then we hit that and I was like, let's go for $1 million a month. Let's make $1 million a month. And everyone was like, that's like, no one could conceive of that number. It was just, what does that even look like? No, we had no idea, no comprehension, probably very few ways of exactly knowing how to get there. But once you just set that goal, we then went, okay, right, what do we do to get to that?
Yeah, how do you get there? Yeah.
And I think that you're planning that cash flow, planning the returns. It took in 2016. So we started in 2009, 2016. So 7 years of building a few, and I think this is another key thing I'll go back to is what you talked about is you get some money together, you make a little business, you hire some people. We spent 7 years perfecting the process and the system to make it so as the founders were not involved operationally.
Yep.
And I think that's when we went, then I got on a plane and I went to New York City, got an Airbnb, and literally started the company again, finder.com. And, that's grown. I think there's like 70 people now in the US. It's a serious operation now, but the only reason we could do that and plan that and understand that is because we spent 7 years perfecting it.
And you knew the systems, yeah. And I think that's the danger with I think there's two problems with entrepreneurs that they get into trouble with. One is focus. So they end up focusing on 20 different things, hoping some money has come from something, and you never focus on your core thing and you let that thing die. And the other thing was interesting. I spoke to Dean Graciosi just recently about the concept of the underdog. And I think you kind of put that in play when you went to New York, because you were basically going to, I'm starting again. I could theoretically just go big in the marketplace and spend a big load of money and fail dismally, or I could treat myself as the underdog and start fresh and be hungry. And I think that's probably the best way to go about something, because then you don't overspend, you don't take big risks that you shouldn't take. And you see people do that.
Well, I think, John, one of the things I would keep my mind open with that, because there may be opportunities where you should go hard and you should spend quite violently when the investment thesis plays out. So, when we go into a market, say we've just opened an office in Toronto, and in that market, there's a lot less competition, and there's a lot less big funded competitors, And so for us, we're actually on a much more even playing field. In fact, we're probably actually one of the big players without, just by beginning, right? And so we have a lot of resource that we can, when you say spend, for us, that's just, you got a direct resource to that area.
Yeah.
And in that instance, I actually think I thought we were underspending, and we've actually upped the investment. We're not making a profit yet there, but we've really, started to invest. And the reason for that, I think, is, you look at a business like, say, even Afterpay, I think they should just be violently spending, because they're just pulling in so many customers and they're getting that first mover advantage, and they have a killer product where they've got the system, they've got everything done. It's kind of like they actually need to move faster to sort of capture the customers and own the market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because they're going to miss out. Like someone will come on and clone them basically and do that.
Like Klarna or Affirm or QuadPay or Split It, like they're all coming.
So the interesting thing, and I've got this theory and I've seen it play out a lot of times, is the theory of the ice makers, right? So what happens is when refrigeration was invented in Australia, because we invented fridges, there was a lot of ice makers around and they never transitioned to refrigeration. They just went broke. And so every time there's a major shift in technology, the incumbents never survive, or they morph into something totally different. You look at sites of Encyclopedia Britannica, like they should have been Wikipedia. There's no reason why they shouldn't have been, but they weren't. And so sometimes when you go into a market where you've got a fresh idea, you think that the incumbents in that kind of market space, like banks, for example, would be able to kind of think, oh, well, we'll take you out, we'll do something. But the reality is they have no ability to understand that technology. And so it's not those people that you're at risk at. It's these new players that just suddenly come out of the blue with a big stack of cash that want to try and make it and steal your business.
100%. The inertia that exists in a larger organization, even for us, where we get scared by, it sounds weird. We were like that company, and then now we look at other small companies like, wow, they're moving so fast. And we're like, we're moving fast, but they're like moving faster. We're like, we're moving in so many different places, and so that nimbleness, you're right, it decreases over time. I think that what you're also highlighting, and what that comes back to, and what we've been very challenged by, is how do you innovate? Right? How do you actually reinvent yourself? And there's a lot of, I think, Christian Claytonson wrote that great book, The Innovator's Dilemma, and I love that book, and I've just read the follow-on book to it. And unfortunately, Christian just passed away last week, which is a very sad story. Because he's a great man and he affected so many people, like Steve Jobs and all those kind of things. But I think that would be the book I'd say if you want, with this challenge, to read. It affected me a lot, and the way in which we kind of have solved that Well, we try and solve it. I wouldn't say we solve it, because who solved innovation? It's tough, right? And this is where this app, the Finder app's been born out of, is we create a separate company.
Yep.
And the reason, you look at, even Amazon did this, right? So when they wanted to create Amazon Web Hosting, Amazon Web Services, so that they're at that business, it was formed in South Africa.
Right.
They sent 23 people over to South Africa to build it because the bandwidth was terrible.
It's bad. I've been there 13 times. It was really bad. You can't even do your emails.
Right.
Yeah.
So they said, if you can run here, you can run anywhere. And so they said that's where they built that business. But they geographically moved them away from the mothership, because otherwise the mothership affected them, and then the innovation doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Now, Christensen said that you can do it, and there's two ways. You can either shepherd some resources, or you just make a whole separate entity. And that's the whole separate entity is really what I found to be the most effective. But other companies like Johnson & Johnson, they're able to do that. Fisher & Paykel have an innovation area, and then they kind of go off on missions and things like that. And I think it's really important, like you said, to understand and see those incumbent businesses coming for you. Those businesses, those ones that are coming for you. But at the same time, a lot of them, I've seen, been doing this for 10 years. I've seen people say that comparison's dead and we're going to kill comparison. And I've seen that so many times from so many different businesses. They don't always work. So sometimes actually the defense of doing nothing can actually be the best response. It could just be a complete distraction. So
ignore them, because they're just distracting you on something that's not even important. Yeah,
and sometimes you just let them like. And so I think if you look at those instances with the ice makers and the fridge, they probably just thought, oh, it's another weird innovation, and who's going to, and they've seen 98 of them before, and this was the one that actually everyone, that's probably, I think, might have been what happened.
Yeah, I mean, my generation, when the internet started, they said it's never going to take off. That it would
never
work, right?
Yeah.
Cloud would never work. When I was in accounting software, they said that no one would trust the cloud for their accounting software. It's almost like no one will do this, but then suddenly over time you got that adoption rate, and eventually everybody goes, oh, it looks easy to me, and they just all fall in suit.
Well, so, it's the same right now. Like, we've connected this app up to people connect their bank accounts up, right? So they share their transaction data. And people are saying, well, who's going to do that? Like, no one's going to give you, I'm like, well, actually, I think that's going to be normal in the future. Like, if someone reads your transactions, as long as it's private and you see it, but the algorithms crunch it and tell you really cool stuff, like, who cares? The banks can already see it.
Well, Facebook's got it all anyway, so who cares?
Yeah, that's true.
Facebook and Google, it's very scary what they've kind of got on you. So, I mean, the day of the privacy, I always say to my son, I said, the day the privacy, you gave up your privacy was the day you logged into the internet. Like, it's gone as soon as you push that login in, because suddenly they know about you and they're starting to track you. And I think from what I can see, social credit, which is something they're apparently doing in China, where they're looking at a scenario where what you do socially on the internet actually counts towards your credit rating. And that's a scary time, because I saw a couple of things on I think it's a show on Netflix, I think Black Mirror, where they actually kind of look into the future. And it's quite scary when you look at this scenario where, sometimes some people will look, oh, well, if you're not the right social status, enough followers on your social app, you won't get credit, you won't get this, you won't get that. And so I think the danger is if anybody puts a head in the sand and says, oh, well, this is not going to happen. You know what I mean? The reality is it's moving that way, that and they've got data on you. Why shouldn't you be using the same data the way that they use it?
100%.
Yeah. So tell me what I want to talk about cryptocurrency for a sec.
Yeah.
You went into that kind of venture. Is that something that you're focusing on still, or is that something that it's sort of like kind of fits into the money side of things, but it looks like something completely different on the other side?
A lot of people inside the company weren't on board with cryptocurrency, and they kind of didn't understand that. And I said, they thought it's just a scam and all this kind of. I said, I actually think this is here to stay. Sure. And I think it's got a lot further to go. It reminds me, if you're going to go back to your analogy, I remember, dialing up on the internet. I remember like bulletin boards and those kind of things. I remember, and I was like, geez, it's good, but it's so bumpy. But the actual reality of what has been created is a miracle. It's just, it's not as user friendly, right?
Yeah.
So I went into that and I've sort of dug deep into that in sort of a preparation for us as a business for the future. Because, we're in a lot of our verticals that we compare are finance. And what if finance changed?
Yeah.
Right. What if banking changed? Like that affects us in that's kind of like when the tectonic plates move on the earth and, that's what, and so I've seen that. That's what I see that whole blockchain and cryptocurrency space being about. There were definitely scams. There were definitely hype. And that's with every market, but you remember? Yeah, you'll remember that as well, John, from the internet. Remember the early stuff that was out there? It's just, and it's still on the internet, all these scams. I think Warren Buffett just got done by a scam. DC Solar for $360 million. Like it still happens, right?
There's always crooks out there. They'll take advantage of the situation.
Yeah. But there is also an absolute miracle that's happened with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a genuine, like it's you start at Bitcoin and you go on this journey and you always come back to Bitcoin. That's what people tend to do. And it's open source money. Right? It's not controlled by a bank. It's not controlled by a central government. It's actually the people's money, which is controlled by code.
Those guys, but government and banks scare the hell out of them.
It is, and that's the thing, right? And everyone's like, "Oh, Bitcoin's dead." Well, it's not, and it's 10 years old now, and the euro's 15 or 16 years old, something like that. And they just lost the UK. So
dramatic when they're the biggest player in the market, so it's not a small player moves out of the marketplace there either.
So I think people. I think with cryptocurrency, it got a rough name and people sort of wrote it off. But it's kind of like I think it's going through one of those phases. It just needed to cook a bit longer. It just needed to be around a bit longer. Just like give it some chance to it's kind of like it was just forming into a little tiny sapling. Everyone's like, look at this forest. You're like, well, not really. Like we're kind of like a bit early. But regardless, that's an investment that we made. And I think unlike other people, we think it's here to stay. We get it. We understand. And I think it's going to be a big part of the future. Especially you look at virtual reality and all that stuff as it's building. Yep. If you were in virtual reality, would you use like a virtual currency? Probably. Seems natural to me, with Fortnite and all those kind of things. I just went to the Australian Open on the weekend. I saw a massive Fortnite tournament there. I was like, wow. It was a stadium of people. I was like, wow. Remember we were talking about computer games and computer gamers are going to be heroes and sports stars. Well, that's here. That's now. They're signing shirts.
Watch people play games. Like it's got crazy, isn't it?
Right. And I think that's the same thing with cryptocurrency. I think it's here to stay. It's going to be part of the future of money. And when money itself changes, that affects things because then you've got things like, you've got decentralized money, then you'll have decentralized finance. So, you can go on in cryptocurrency and you can deposit money and you can get, 6, 7, 8% earnings. No. And it's, that's that.
The banks are paying like 1% if you're lucky.
Right. So I think one of the challenges with any new technology like that you get that it's about sorting the scammers from the reality and figuring out what is actually legit. The thing I actually felt like, but is because I was there building websites and I understood that and I learned, I watched the internet grow and I could spot the scams. I was like, that's a scam.
That smells like a spam.
Yeah. I've seen a hype skull. I've seen someone do that before. I've seen that before. I know what happens to that. That, on the other hand, is real. That's legit. And I don't know, it's just, I guess I felt like I had more experience to be able to navigate it in a way where I could easily sort of sort through it, a new industry. And, for me, that it was fun, and it rebirthed me and it gave me a lot of excitement. And, now I sort of put that and I've boxed that up. We still have, a lot of investment in that area. It's just, now we're coming back to some of these new things like our app and the open banking and things like that, where And fintech and stuff like that, I think is I'm finding very exciting as well.
Because I think, in my opinion, because the reality is, I read this book recently, Homo Sapiens, and it was talking about the concept that if everybody went to the bank today and drew all the money they had, there wouldn't be enough money printed to be able to cope with it. So the reality is the bank's already doing cryptocurrency. They're already doing digital currency because they don't have the money. They can't print the money. Yep. They're lending against the money they don't really have anyway. So the reality is that people think, it's almost like, to me, it's like the share market, right? People say, I don't want to invest in the share market. It's risky. I said, but your superannuation's invested in it. And so it's like the perception is not the reality. And I think at the end of the day, the banks, but you see this thing, right? If the banks wanted to own cryptocurrency, all they have to do is go and do it, but they won't. So they're going to end up being the ice makers, in my opinion, and that could be the way that cryptocurrency goes, because they catch them by surprise because they don't think it's important, they don't talk about it, and they kind of avoid it. So I think that situation is, I think the world will change, and currency has changed plenty of times before. You read back on what money used to be, seashells. You used to use seashells as money way before they had cash or actual coins and things. So it just become easier over time. And my theory anyway is money is an exchange of energy anyway. It's not real. So it's only confidence. At the end of the day, there really is money.
Well, I'd separate two things then. I think there's currency and then there's money. So quick story. In 2006, there was a builder who was fixing a fence for a farmer, and he dropped his hammer in the field. It was up in North England. Dropped his hammer, couldn't find his hammer. He went to the farmer, hey, I can't find my hammer. Do you have a metal detector? He goes, yeah, I got one for Christmas. He's like, oh, cool. Comes out, he's scanning, it's just this metal detector's going off. He's like, wow, it's crazy. It puts his hand down and he picks up a handful of Roman gold and silver coins. Wow. They call up the archaeologists that dig it up, and they got a treasure fee. So there's a treasure, you can't hold treasure, and there's a law. You got paid the money for it, but they got paid £1.7 million for the gold and silver. Nice. And so if you think about that, and they discovered it was 500 years ago someone buried these things, right?
Which wouldn't be much then.
No, but you think about it, it might have been even before that, or wherever it might have been. Regardless, say you buried, $100 note or £100 note right now for 500 years. How much would it be worth?
Nothing. 100. If you're lucky, it wouldn't be worth anything.
Right.
Yeah.
But the gold and the silver coins maintain their value.
It's physical. It's something real to a degree.
So that to me is money. Whereas currency is a representation of money. So it used to be that currency was connected to gold, but it's not anymore.
No.
And so this whole idea of printing money and things like that is really central to cryptocurrency, and why people are really big on Bitcoin, because they think Bitcoin is the same thing, right? You can't print more Bitcoin. There's only 21 million. And so Bitcoin, if you wanted to put it somewhere, it's kind of like digital gold. So it's actually money and this theory needs to play out, right? No one knows because, but it's playing out pretty well of, the theory of it and the economics and how it sort of, I can get into that, but it's not, I don't think it's for another time. But I think, coming back to what you're saying, I agree, currency is not, every currency will go to zero. Has in history, always will, starts at zero, ends at zero. That's just how it is.
Look at Zimbabwe, for example. People get paid $1 billion a month to be a cleaner in Zimbabwe because the currency is in the toilet.
Yeah. And currencies have been used all throughout time for governments and dictators to steal money from their people.
Sure.
Because they print the money. And so, and you're right? So we're already kind of in cryptocurrency. We just, a lot of those things are going to take time. Imagine the first person, John, that went up to someone and said, hey, here's this shiny gold thing. Can I have your cow?
It'll never take off, you'll say. It'll never take off.
That'll never take off.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's always got to be the first person to agree to it, and then it goes from there. But I think at the end of the day, that's the trick. I think in the best time ever when it comes down to being an entrepreneur, because you can start a business up very quickly. You can come up with an idea. You can test it. If it doesn't work, move on to something else. But the reality is that you don't have to have a big advertising spend. You don't have to set up business premises. This whole virtual thing, which is real rather than fake. Because at the end of the day, you can start something so quickly. And you find there was also a story, if you sort of piss off a young person, say around the 20s, on something they don't like, they could set up a business against you tomorrow and beat you, right? Because of the way that the world is. So I think now is the best time. That entrepreneur can't kind of make it in this market. They probably never will, because they've got so many things that. I mean, if I ran my business, I had like 23 staff in a business premises 10 years ago. If I had cloud back then, I'd have half as many staff and wouldn't even have a business premise, and I would have saved $1 million a year. And so, leveraging those things is the best assets anybody's ever had. And I think now's, I think it's worth a shot. And sometimes you don't experiment. It doesn't cost that much money out nowadays, when it used to cost. You'd have to go and open the shop and have to pass government regulations, all sorts of stuff. Now you can virtually test it and see what happens and ship it from home. So tell me what your normal day looks like in comparison. And I guess in the early days, you would have been doing a lot of the physical kind of techie work and stuff like that. But what's your normal day look like now? What's your day?
I talk to a lot of people. So I talk. I guess I have meetings with people, and I read a lot of reports.
Yep.
I want to know the heartbeat of the company. I meet with a lot of my leaders and understand what's going on. I personally run the Finder Ventures business, so I'm very involved hands-on in the new stuff, very new frontier testing, making decisions in that area. And I'm good at that. I think I'm much better at as an entrepreneur kind of leader rather than a manager. I think that's an important insight. You got to understand.
You like to hunt than rather plant. You like to go hunting.
Yeah, I'm really good at that. But I can manage. It's not to say I can't manage. I'm better at leadership. I'm a better leader than I am a manager. So a lot of my, I do a lot of thinking as well. I'll read stuff. I'll go to events and I'll think. I know that sounds weird, but
it's worth it. It's amazing what you come up with when you go away on holidays or go trip somewhere, right?
Yeah, I need to make 6 or 8 decisions a day that are really good and that affect a lot of people. And I need to take in all the variables and start that journey. And a lot of the time I'm planning for the next events that are going to be with my leaders and thinking about what's the information that they need, where are they at, and as a leadership team, I'm thinking about how do I help the team. Mm-hmm. That sounds strange, but I'm focused on how's the team going. Mm-hmm. So the dynamics between the team, the dialogue, the transparency, those are all really important things. I'm traveling a lot, so I'll be overseas somewhere. I'm listening to someone, or I'm meeting a certain new business, or I'm researching a new product. I do a lot of that. I do quite a bit of speaking as well. So as a CEO in Finder, I'm the co-CEO with my other co-founder. He's more of the CEO than myself, I'd say, day to day, but I'm more of the forward-looking style.
Yep. Best not to have 2 of those people in the business. They'll drive each other nuts.
That's right. Yeah. But I think the key is that combination works really well. And the thing, is I'd say I'm more of a marketing and promotions CEO whereas Frank's more of an analytical, financial, operations style CEO, and so they combine together in that sense.
That's nice, yeah. I mean, that's the 2 splits. That's the hardest part in business, is to run a business and build a business, because it's very different skill sets needed to do that.
Yeah, I think I'm back in the day when we were starting in the beginning, like the first, I'd say 4 years, particularly the first 2 years, I was really leading and managing the company. Like that's really, I I bet, whereas now then it got bigger, then I'd say Frank was more leading and more managing the company, and we would lead it together. And then now I'd say Frank would be more leading, and I'm, I guess, taking more of like an executive chairman role. And then, but in the ventures business, I'm like day to day on the ground, CEO meet, report, like hardcore. Right. So, it's very different. But I'm good at that in the beginning. I guess 0 to 25.
Yep.
I'm very effective. Past that, not so good. Dunbar's law is my enemy.
And you need something fresh to sort of keep you thinking, because otherwise you're going to end up, making probably decisions that really aren't designed to be safe. It's more about trying to get more zest in your game, I think. Yeah.
100%. And that's important, to have that reflection, and definitely something I've done.
And I think that's a good important thing you talk about. So what I like to do is, go away on a trip or something like that. If you're sitting on a plane for 14 hours and you can't have internet, then you have to think or do something else. And I think that's when you start thinking about things that you normally don't get time to think about. And I think that's a big area in business where it's okay to sit and think for half a day or a day. It doesn't mean that you're doing the wrong thing, because I think a lot of people don't do that. And in my business, when I see a lot of customers, I come along and say, well, you haven't thought out your business properly, because what you're doing is just doing stuff. You're just running from one thing to another, hustling from one each meeting to another. You haven't stopped to think about what is actually a website even says about you. And I think that's the danger, is that they forget to actually think. Yeah. It's
tough because, the phone's ringing and the emails are piling up and the orders are getting later.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always hungry mouths to feed, right? So the last question I want to ask you is one I usually try and ask a lot of my guests, and it's a bit of a curly one in some respects. Some people have trouble with it, some people are okay. And that is, what was the one thing you'd tell your younger self before you got started with this? Like, a lot of people say, well, geez, I wish I'd done this or said this or done, gone and done this. What would you tell your younger self to do?
It's something which, for me, I think a lot of my energy and power comes from myself. I'm that driving force, the energy. People talk about me as the sort of the electricity in the company. Mm-hmm. And what I would have done is I would have said, and it's taken me a long time just to say, have faith.
Trust yourself, right?
Just trust yourself. It's all good. It's going to be okay. It's what's going to happen is going to happen. It's okay. And you're a good player, and have faith. And because whatever you're going to do and do it your absolute best is what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to say like I'm a what do you call that? Like a future teller or whatever, but
fortune teller or whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, realistically, you as an individual will do your absolute best, and what you can do is what you will do. And the thing is, that's all of those other things that's going to happen, and you're going to learn. No matter which way it happens, that's just how you're going to learn. That's the way you're going to experience, and that's fine. The key part, but for me, which, I guess it takes me a lot, and that's where it always comes back to, is just have faith in yourself. Then, and know, don't truly believe and know you're going to make it.
And I think at the end of the day, like, what you say to yourself when you're alone is the most dangerous words.
Yeah.
And so it's very easy to beat yourself up. And I was like, come back to the Uber driver, like he's still beating himself up a little bit. When his story was, he was starting to come out of it, you can tell. But at the end of the day, he wasn't betting himself really to a degree. He was trying to raise money on Uber. I mean, that's they make a lot of money on Uber from what I can understand, the amount of time I've spoken to people. So he's spending most of his time earning a little bit of money. So he's not really, to my opinion, if he could day trade, find another way to make money, find a lazy way to make money, he's found a hard way to make money. And he wants to grow, right? And I think that's the key to that. He hasn't really backed himself because he's still scared he's going to fail. and make a mistake.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think the things you say to yourself, like, I'll rephrase that as well. I'll add to you, and I agree with you. I just think you can be dangerous. You can also be dangerous, and let's look at that word dangerous in a very positive way.
Oh, yeah, because sometimes it can go the other way.
Yeah, like you can. I think a lot, and I like that as well. Having that internal dialogue about who you think about, what you think of yourself. That took. I've spent the last 5 years with an emotional coach and worked through a lot of those things, and got into a very positive place and aligned place to be myself. But the part I think I'm struggling with, and I've struggled with a lot, is you got to keep reinventing yourself. That's the thing. As an entrepreneur and as a company, it needs different things from you, and I think that's where I've constantly been challenged, and where you got to have faith. And it's okay to keep reinventing yourself. It's okay.
So is your business your model essentially when you went into business? Did you think about the fact you were creating a legacy business that you might pass on to your family, or was it something that you figured you'd sell down the track? Did you make a decision at the start as to what you wanted to do, or is it something that just kind of come along?
I think Frank and I started that from our previous business. So this company was born out of the previous company, and we sold that other part of the business. But we've always wanted to make something that lasts forever. And so, we're not going to stop. We think it's still day one, because, we're going to keep going and keep making it until it's, a welded on part of humanity. And I think it's possible.
Money, really? You got a bigger mission than money.
Yeah, it's got to survive and endure. So I don't want to build a unicorn company. I want to build a phoenix. Phoenixes continuously reinvent themselves and give birth to themselves again and become stronger. And that's what I admire. I love companies. I love a company like Sony. It's going along making RAM, then it makes the Walkman.
Yeah.
And then it's going along and it's made TVs, and it makes a PlayStation.
Now it makes movies. Like
genius. It constantly reinvents itself. And grows and becomes stronger and bigger. And I think that's what I admire. A company like Chrysler reinventing its Fiat Chrysler, they built those new Chrysler cars. I love that. I think that's what I admire.
Yeah, not just to make it the first time, but keep, reinvent it and start again and make it again. I think that proves you know what you're doing.
That's a great company to me. That's what I admire. Like other people, they want to build, one big, great, this is what, la, la, la. I'm like, cool, build one, but what if we build like keep building, new, evolve,
There you go. Actually, it's quite funny because when I was running a software company, this guy that actually used to run the company before me, I think he was didn't like me for that reason. But anyway, he said to me, "Can you stop changing stuff? Can you stop stop changing things in the company?" And I thought to myself, "Man, you're doomed." Because the world is changing constantly. Your body's changing. Everything is changing all the time. And you want me to stop change? Exactly who do you think I am anyway? But do you know what I mean? It was quite bizarre. He'd been in business a long time and he sort of got to the end of his kind of business life to a degree. But he's gone, oh, you keep changing stuff. And it's like, well, if you don't change, if you're not moving, you're dying, right? If you're not moving. And so I think that's the thing. A lot of people don't like change. And there's a certain, I guess, personality trait that doesn't like change as well. And they're usually the last to adopt anything anyway. But they're only maybe a third of the marketplace anyway. So I think at the end of the day, you've got to accept change is inevitable, not something that you can just sit on your laurels and go, great, I've made this money now. I'm just going to sit there and keep taking it in because, in business, someone's always out to get what you've got.
Yeah, 100%.
Makes sense. I really appreciate you coming along and having a good chat because I really like to dig in deep. So obviously you got Finder app, which is, I'm understanding is global. So basically there's an Australian version and there's obviously in different countries you're building it out, which is great because everybody's got a credit card, right? So what's the best sort of for you in terms of the podcast and what you'd like listeners to do from this point of listening to your thing? What would you like them to do from here to sort of continue a relationship with you or find out about what you more?
I'm on LinkedIn and I talk a lot on LinkedIn a lot, so you can come and follow me there.
Yep.
I also, if they want to try the app, that's sort of my latest work, and you can see and I think it just helps you save money. It unlocks savings for you, so it doesn't cost anything either. So
I'll give it a go. Give it a go.
Yeah. Maybe it'll save you money. If you're not into that, that's cool as well. Either which way. But I think those are the two things. Hopefully it'll help people.
Yep.
And that's what Selffunding is all about. And if they want to learn more, and I speak a lot, we have a LinkedIn club called the Disruptors Club, and I privately post things that there and answer questions. That's sort of where, if you want to get more involved with myself, that's sort of where to go.
Cool. All right. Excellent. Well, thanks, Fred, for your time, and hopefully we can talk again soon. We'll find another subject to talk about. I'm sure there's plenty.
Oh, that's great, John. You're a very prodigious entrepreneur. I love it.
Cool. No worries. I'll talk to you again soon, and we'll put all the links up on the website as well so people can find it.
Do, and I'll send it around to my crew.
Right. That's it. Excellent. Thank you.